Penrose. The final stroke of his signature formed. The old man waited whilst the ink dried on the page, folded it, and secured it with a blob of sealing wax, melted in the flame of the candle beside his bed. Then he reached for the bell-pull and tugged upon it. The servant who entered the bedchamber was almost as old as he, and had been in the service of the Penrose family since he was a boy, and his own father still squire. But though her once trim figure was now stout, and her chins wobbled ponderously over the neck of her calico gown, her silver hair was still shot through with black, her legs still did her bidding, if a little more slowly than of old, and her hands were as steady as they had ever been. Trudy Billing was as strong as a moorland pony, he thought ruefully. Would that he had been blessed with her rude health. "Oh, sir," she admonished him now, hands on ample hips. "What in all the world have you been up to? You look terrible, and that's not to be wondered at. First visitors, and then letter writing. You know what Dr. Warburton said. You need to rest." "Some things are more important than rest, Trudy," he managed between rasping breaths. "This letter is for Adam." Trudy fixed him with a beady stare. "We don't know where Mr. Adam is to send him any letter, sir. We don't even know if he's alive or dead. And America is a big country, so they say." "Give it to him when he comes home," the old man managed. "If he comes home." She crossed herself. "This terrible war." "Keep it safe, Trudy. Deliver it into his hands and no one else's." "Oh, whatever you say." She took it from him, tucking it into the pocket of her apron. "Promise me, Trudy. To no one but Adam. Promise me now." "Oh, very well, I promise. If you promise to get some rest." The door closed after her. Ralph Penrose sank back against his pillows, drained by the efforts of the last hour. It was out of his hands now. He had done all that he could. Now it was up to others, and the will of God. He closed his eyes and drifted into exhausted sleep. Chapter 1. As the coach jolted and swayed down the steep hill, I sat forward in my seat, pulling aside the dusty brown velvet curtain so as to catch my first glimpse of Truro. The impatience to be home that had simmered in me, not just for the duration of the journey, but for the last 2 weeks since news of Mammy's illness had reached me, grew ever more insistent, so that it seemed to me the horse's measured pace was impossibly slow. It was all I could do to keep from throwing open the door and leaping out, to run before them down the rutted road, petticoats flying, bonnet hanging by its ribbon round my neck, as I had not run since I was a child. But of course I could do no such thing. I was 20 years old, and young women of 20 years old did not run like scruffy urchins, even if such a thing would not be foolish in the extreme. Some of the snow which had delayed my journey home still lay in stubborn patches where the sun had not reached it. The treacherous surface most likely accounted for the care with which the coachman was descending the hill. Why, on Bodmin Moor the drifts had looked still deep enough to swallow a man whole, and if I gave in to my rash impulse, I would doubtless be flat on my back before I had gone more than a dozen yards. But I wriggled in my seat all the same, so that the clerical man beside me, who had had his nose in a book for most of the duration of the journey, huffed reprovingly and moved a little further away from me, and the rosy-cheeked woman who sat opposite, a baby on her knee, smiled at me knowingly. "You from round these parts, dearie?" "Malin." But I could scarcely tear my eyes away from the window to look at her. "And you're in service somewhere, I'll be bound, and coming home to visit?" I frowned. Was it so obvious? "Launceston," I said. "I'm in service in Launceston." She pursed her lips, satisfied. "I knew it. You're eager to see your family again. There's nothing like distance to make you want for your own." She was right, of course. When I had first obtained my position in Launceston, it had seemed as if I had gone to the other side of the world.